Find peace by living in harmony with the unbreakable laws of nature. Learn more below.
The Laws of Nature. A Guide to the Recognition of the Divine Will in Creation. Preface. The Call to Clarity. In an era where humanity stands at the peak of its intellectual achievement, a profound shadow remains over the human spirit. Despite our mastery of the atom and the digital code, the most fundamental questions, the why and whither of existence, remain unanswered by science and clouded by religious dogma. This guide, The Laws of Nature, is not intended to be another philosophical theory or a new system of belief. It is a clarion call to the individual to look at the world with new eyes. The correction of sight. Mankind has made the fatal error of viewing nature as a mere backdrop for human drama, a resource to be exploited or a chaotic force to be feared. We have separated the physical world from the spiritual realm, creating a rift that has left the modern soul adrift. This book clarifies that such a separation does not exist. The laws that govern the orbiting planets are the very same laws that govern the human soul. There is only one truth, and it is written in the living language of the universe. The purpose of this guide. This work is composed for three distinct groups. To the seeker, for those who have found no rest in the dry explanations of the intellect or the rigid rituals of the past. Here you will find the logic of the spirit. To the trapped, for those caught between the chains of blind faith and the cold void of atheism. This guide provides the key to the prison, the recognition of a mathematically perfect and loving creation. To mankind today, for a civilization that senses a coming storm. This book serves as a map to navigate the great cleaning that is currently accelerating the effects of every human thought and deed. The method of recognition. To benefit from these pages, the reader must set aside the cleverness of the brain for a moment and listen with the intuition. Truth is always simple, it is the human intellect that makes it complicated. As you read, do not ask, does this fit my old beliefs? But rather, does this resonate with the core of my being? The laws of nature are the living will of the Creator. They are the tracks upon which the train of your life must run. To know them is to understand the past, to obey them is to master the future. Step forward into the light of truth. The way is open to all who are of a good will. Introduction. The living language of God. For too long, the human spirit has stood before the phenomenon of nature as a stranger. We have catalogued the stars, split the atom, and mapped the genetic code, yet we remain fundamentally perplexed by the events of our own lives. We speak of nature as if it were a mindless machine, and of fate as if it were a blind, arbitrary gambler. The Great Clarification. The core purpose of this book is to unveil a singular, transformative truth. The laws of nature are the living will of the Creator. They are not mere physical observations or mathematical accidents. They are the active, self-executing expressions of divine perfection. From the growth of a blade of grass to the soaring heights of the spiritual realms, nothing exists outside of these laws. They are the invisible threads that weave the tapestry of our existence, ensuring that justice and love are never separated. The correction of modern perception. Mankind's current orientation is one of mastery through manipulation. We believe that by understanding a chemical reaction, we have conquered a law. This is the height of intellectual vanity. To master nature is not to dominate her, but to obey her. This introduction serves as the threshold to a new understanding. Creation is a unity. There is no secular world and sacred world. There is only one creation, and the same laws apply to the body, the mind, and the spirit. The law is automatic. You do not need a judge to sentence you, nor a priest to absolve you. The laws of nature, specifically the laws of reciprocal action, attraction, and gravitation, are so perfectly designed that they return to every human being exactly what they have produced, with mathematical precision. The path to enlightenment. To read this book is to begin a process of unlearning. You must set aside the heavy, complicated theories of the world and return to the simplicity of the spirit. The laws of nature are not meant to be debated, they are meant to be lived. As you proceed through these chapters, you will find that the way out of human suffering and confusion is not found in new technology or political reform, but in the alignment of the individual spirit with the divine will. When you learn to swing With these laws, the friction of life disappears, and you find yourself supported by the very power that sustains the universe. Welcome to the recognition of the truth. Let us begin by dissolving the misconceptions that have kept the human spirit in darkness for so long. Part 1. The Foundation, Dissolving Misconceptions. The Great Error. Why the separation between science and religion is an illusion. For centuries, mankind has lived in a self-imposed state of spiritual and intellectual schizophrenia. You have divided your world into two rigid camps: science, which deals with the real, or material world, and religion, which deals with the unseen, or the hereafter. This is the foundational error that has led to the current disorientation of the human spirit. The correction: there is no such thing as a supernatural world. There is only one creation, governed by one law. When you speak of religion, you are speaking of the spiritual laws of this creation. When you speak of science, you are observing the physical manifestations of those same laws. The error lies in the belief that God stands outside of his creation as an arbitrary ruler who can intervene and break laws at will. In truth, the Creator has placed his perfect will into creation in the form of automatic, self-acting laws. Science has limited itself by only looking at the effects, the outermost shell, of matter. It observes how a seed grows but cannot explain the animating force that compels it to reach for the light. Religion has erred by drifting into mysticism and dogma, separating faith from logical reality. It treats the Creator as a distant, temperamental being rather than the source of the very laws that science tries to measure. The Enlightenment. To understand the laws of nature is to practice the only true religion, and to be truly scientific is to acknowledge the spiritual pressure that makes physical matter possible. When these two fields finally merge, man will realize that a sin is simply a technical error against the laws of creation, and a physical law is a greeting from the living God. The origin of law. The laws of nature as the living, immutable will of the Creator. Mankind views the laws of nature as a set of cold, accidental rules that happen to emerge from a Big Bang. This view is a trap. You speak of gravity, thermodynamics, or evolution, as if they were independent inventions of the universe. The clarification: what you call nature is the outworking of the will of God. These laws were not created at a specific moment in time, they are the radiation of the Creator's perfection. Because the source is perfect, the laws are immutable, unchangeable. They do not adapt to your desires, your prayers, or your good intentions. Imagine the laws of nature as a giant, intricate weaving machine, the loom of creation. Every thread is a law. They are self-acting. They do not need a judge to sit in a courtroom to decide your fate. The judgment is built into the law itself. Uniformity. The same law that causes a stone to fall to the ground causes a heavy, guilt-laden soul to sink into the lower regions of the ethereal world after death. The eye-opener. You have lived as if you were separate from nature. You speak of conquering it, but how can a creature conquer the very laws that give it breath? To defy the laws of nature is to commit slow-motion suicide. True freedom is not found in mastering these laws, but in adjusting yourself to them. When you swing in harmony with these laws, they become your greatest servants, carrying you upward toward the light. The intellect versus the spirit. Why the human brain has failed to grasp the simplicity of nature's workings. The greatest barrier to understanding the laws of nature is the one you carry within your own skull, the overcultivated intellect. The correction. The human brain is a tool of the earthly body. It is designed to manage material things, space, time, and physical survival. It is of the earth, earthy. The spirit, however, is the true I, the core of the human being that originates from the spiritual realm. Mankind has made a God of the intellect. Because the intellect is limited to the physical world, it cannot perceive anything that vibrates at a higher speed than dense matter. The intellect demands proof that it can see with physical eyes. The spirit, however, possesses intuition, linden, which feels the truth of the laws before the brain can even form a sentence. The Enlightenment. The laws of nature are incredibly simple. It is the intellect that makes them complicated with theories, formulas, and dogmas. The intellect is like a man looking through a microscope. He sees the details of a single leaf but loses sight of the entire forest. 2. C. The laws of nature. You must learn to listen to your inner intuition again. The spirit knows that it is part of the great whole. It does not need a PhD to understand that, what you sow, you must reap. It only needs to be awake. You are currently trapped in the prison of the intellect. You have built a world that is technically advanced but spiritually dead. To find the way out, you must demote the intellect to its rightful place as a servant and allow the spirit to be the master. Only then will the simplicity of the universe become clear to you once more. Part 2. The Three Pillars of Existence. The law of reciprocal action, the spiritual action and reaction that forms the threads of human fate. Mankind speaks of karma, fate, or luck, as if these were mysterious, capricious forces. You often complain of unmerited suffering or wonder why the wicked seem to prosper. This confusion arises because you view life through a tiny keyhole, the span of a single earthly existence. The correction. The law of reciprocal action is the cosmic manifestation of the physical principle of action and reaction. However, it is far more than a physical rebound, it is the living justice of the Creator. Every thought you think, every word you utter, and every deed you perform is a seed cast into the soil of creation. By the pressure of this law, these seeds must germinate, ripen, and eventually be harvested by the one who sowed them. The invisible threads. When you act, you send out a thread of energy. This thread remains attached to you, the producer. As it travels through the universe, it gathers similar energies and eventually returns to you with increased force, carrying the fruit of your initial intent. Justice, not punishment. The law is entirely neutral. It does not judge you in the way an earthly court does. It simply returns to you exactly what you gave out. If you sow love, you receive a harvest of light. If you sow envy or malice, you are inevitably bound by the thorns of your own creation. The enlightenment. You are the absolute master of your destiny. No God punishes you, and no Satan tempts you beyond your own secret desires. What you experience today is the ripening of what you sowed yesterday, whether in this life or in a previous existence. To change your fate, you must change the nature of your sowing immediately. The law ensures that the moment you turn toward the light, you begin to weave new, luminous threads that will eventually displace the old. The law of attraction of homogeneous species. How like attracts like, shapes our environments and our afterlife. You are familiar with the proverb, birds of a feather flock together, yet you fail to realize that this is a fundamental law of nature that governs the structure of the entire universe. This law is the great sorter. The clarification. In the ethereal and spiritual worlds, there is no hiding your true nature. On earth, a liar can pretend to be honest, and a thief can wear the robes of a priest. But the law of attraction ensures that, energetically, like must seek like. The formation of spheres. This law creates the different planes of existence. Those with dark, heavy thoughts are naturally drawn together, forming realms of misery. Those with noble, pure aspirations are drawn into luminous heights. This is the mechanical reality behind what religions call heaven and hell. The power of association. Even while on earth, this law is active. Your inner state attracts people, opportunities, and accidents of a similar nature. If you harbor a specific vice, you will find yourself surrounded by those who nourish that vice, creating a homogeneous environment that makes it harder for you to change. The eye-opener. You are never alone in your thoughts. Through the law of attraction, your thoughts connect you to power centers of similar thoughts. A persistent thought of hatred connects you to a vast reservoir of hatred, which then flows back into you, strengthening your dark impulse. Conversely, a single pure thought connects you to the source of all purity. You choose your company every second of the day by the species of your inner vibration. The law of gravitation. The heaviness of darkness and the lightness of purity, the natural sorting of souls. Most people consider gravitation a purely physical law that keeps planets in orbit and feet on the ground. In the light of the Grail Message, you must recognize that this law is a spiritual reality of the highest importance. The correction. Everything in creation has a specific weight or density. In the spiritual sense, weight is determined by the purity of the spirit. Lightness, purity, love, and joy are light vibrations. They lack the lead of ego and material obsession. A soul filled with these qualities is naturally buoyant. Heaviness, hate, envy, greed, and sensuality are dense. They compress the ethereal body, making it heavy and dark. The enlightenment. When the physical body is cast off at death, the law of gravitation takes over with absolute precision. The soul, now unburdened by the heavy physical shell, sinks, or rises, to the exact level in the ethereal world that matches its own inner weight. There is no judgment seat, where your deeds are weighed on a scale. You are your own scale. A heavy soul cannot rise to the light any more than a stone can float on air. It must sink until it reaches a level of equal density. The warning for mankind. Modern man has become top-heavy through the overcultivation of the intellect and the neglect of the spirit. This makes the collective weight of humanity dangerously dense. To ascend, you do not need to perform complex rituals, you simply need to shed the weight of your base desires and ignoble habits. By becoming light in your inner being, you naturally fulfill the law of gravitation, which will then carry you upward toward the luminous gardens of the spirit. Part 3. The mechanism of creation. The density of matter. Understanding the different planes of existence from the ethereal to the gross material. To understand the laws of nature, man must first expand his definition of nature. You have fallen into the trap of believing that only what you can touch, see under a microscope, or measure with earthly instruments constitutes reality. The correction. What you call the universe is merely the densest, heaviest, and outermost layer of a vast, multi-layered creation. Imagine the atmosphere of the earth. It is thickest and heaviest at the surface and becomes finer, lighter, and more radiant as you ascend. Creation follows a similar principle of graduation. Gross matter. This is the world you inhabit, the realm of physical bodies, stars, and stones. It is the end station of the creative will, where vibrations are slowest and most condensed. Ethereal matter. Just beyond the reach of physical eyes lies a world of finer density. This is the beyond, where the soul journeys after earthly death. It is still matter, but of a species so fine that physical light passes through it. It is the realm of your thoughts and intuitions, which take on visible forms there. The spiritual realm. Far above all matter lies the origin, the realm of the spirit. This is not matter at all, but a consistency of such high vibration and purity that it is eternal and unchanging. The enlightenment. These planes are not separated by vast distances in space, but by differences in species and density. They interpenetrate one another. You are living in the ethereal and the gross material worlds simultaneously. Your physical body acts in the material, while your spirit, the real you, resides in the ethereal. Death is nothing more than the spirit, stepping out of its heavy material overcoat. Once you understand this structure, the supernatural becomes perfectly natural. It is simply a matter of different grades of nature, governed by the same laws. The cycle of radiation. How all life is sustained by the pressure of the light. Mankind wonders at the source of life, yet looks for it in chemical combinations or biological accidents. This is looking at the bulb and ignoring the electricity. The clarification. All life, movement, and heat in the entire creation originate from a single source, the radiation of the Creator. This radiation is the living power that flows from the spiritual heights down through all the planes of existence. The pressure of the light. Think of this power as a constant, unrelenting pressure. As it descends, it encounters the various layers of matter. This pressure forces matter to move, to circulate, and to form into shapes, from galaxies to atoms. The cooling process. As the radiation travels further from its source, it cools and becomes denser. This is the natural process of becoming. Without this constant inflow of power, the universe would instantly cease to exist. It would dissolve into nothingness. The eye-opener. You, as a human spirit, are like a small transformer. You receive this pure power and color it with your will and your thoughts. You then send it back out into the world. This is your great responsibility. You are using the Creator's own power to either build beauty or spread decay. When your inner state is dark, you soil the power as it passes through you. When you are pure, you allow the light to flow through you undimmed, bringing healing and order to the nature around you. You are part of a great cycle. Power flows down to you, and it should flow back up to the Creator as a harvest of joyful, productive activity. Animism and the elemental forces, the servants in nature that modern man has forgotten to see. In your enlightened, modern age, you look back at your ancestors' belief in nature spirits, or elementals, as mere fairy tales and superstition. This arrogance has blinded you to the very laborers who maintain your physical world. The correction: the laws of nature do not execute themselves in a vacuum. Just as a factory needs workers to operate the machinery, creation utilizes animistic beings, the small entities, to form, maintain, and dissolve material things. The elemental helpers. These are the beings traditionally known as gnomes, elves, sylphs, and undines. They are not spirits, in the human sense, they are animistic. They lack the free will of the human spirit but possess a high degree of intelligence and a total, joyful obedience to the laws of the Creator. The builders of form. It is these beings who guide the growth of a crystal, who direct the sap in a tree, and who manage the weather patterns. They are the unseen hands that weave the fabric of the material world under the pressure of the light. The enlightenment. Man has lost the ability to see or communicate with these beings because his intellect has become too rigid and his spirit too dull. By denying their existence, you have cut yourself off from the heartbeat of nature. The current environmental crises are not just chemical imbalances, they are the result of the elemental beings reacting to the dark, discordant vibrations that humanity is pouring into the atmosphere. These servants are becoming unfriendly because man has become a destructive guest in their workshop. To find your way back to harmony, you must acknowledge these servants of the Lord and learn to live in a way that supports their building work rather than hindering it. Part 4. Man's place in the web of laws. The gift of free will. How man uses the laws of nature to weave his own garment of destiny. Perhaps no concept has been more distorted by earthly philosophy than free will. Many believe it means they can act without consequences, while others, seeing the chains of heredity and environment, believe it does not exist at all. Both are in error. The clarification: free will is the inherent prerogative of the spirit. It is not a tool of the intellect or the physical body. It is the power of the spirit spark to decide its own direction, towards the light or towards the darkness. However, free will does not mean you are above the law. It means you are free to trigger the laws in any direction you choose. Think of the laws of nature as a perfectly tuned musical instrument. You are the player. You are free to strike any note you wish, discordant or harmonious. But once the note is struck, you have no power over the sound that follows. The sound is the law. The weaving of the garment. Every decision you make acts as a shuttle on the loom of creation. You choose the color and the quality of the thread. If you choose threads of hatred, the law of reciprocal action weaves them into a dark, heavy garment that you must eventually wear. If you choose threads of purity, you weave a garment of light that allows you to ascend. The illusion of arbitrariness. You cannot will a harvest of wheat if you have sown weeds. Your freedom lies only in the choice of the seed. Once the seed is in the ground, the law of nature takes over with a mechanical, relentless consistency. The enlightenment. You are not a victim of fate. You are the author of it. Your current circumstances are the garment you have woven for yourself in the past. To wear a better garment tomorrow, you must use your free will to choose better threads today. Responsibility. Why ignorance of the law does not protect the human spirit from the consequences. In earthly courts, a judge may show mercy to one who did not know the law. In the workshop of the universe, such a concept does not exist. Mankind has used ignorance as a shield for too long, but this shield is made of paper and will not protect you from the heat of the truth. The correction. If a man steps off a precipice, the law of gravitation will pull him down regardless of whether he knew about gravity or intended to fall. The law is impartial and automatic. Similarly, the spiritual laws of nature act upon you with total indifference to your earthly degrees, your titles, or your lack of knowledge. The duty to know. As a guest in this creation, it is your first duty to learn the house rules, the laws of your Creator. To live in creation without knowing its laws is like driving a high-powered vehicle through a crowded city without knowing how to steer. The resulting accident is your responsibility alone. The weight of intent. Responsibility begins at the very moment of a volition, the inner stirrings of a thought. You are responsible for the energy you release into the world. If you support a lie through silence or laziness, you are as responsible for its consequences as the one who told it. The eye-opener. Mankind's misery today is the direct result of this spiritual laziness. You have handed over your responsibility to priests, politicians, and scientists, hoping they will find a way out for you. But no one can eat or breathe for you, and no one can take your responsibility before the laws of God. You stand alone in the law, and your ignorance is not a misfortune, it is a neglect for which you must pay the full price until the debt is cleared through experiencing the consequences. The mystery of intuition. Using the inner voice to sense the movement of the laws. How is man to know the laws if they are not written in earthly books? You have been provided with a perfect navigation system that is far superior to the intellect, the intuition. Linden. The clarification. Intuition is not feeling or emotion. Emotions like fear, anger, or fleeting excitement are products of the physical body and the nerves. Intuition, however, is the voice of the spirit. It is a flash of certainty that bypasses the slow, clunky machinery of the brain. The spiritual antenna. Your spirit is of the same species as the higher laws. Therefore, it vibrates in response to them. When you are about to act against the laws of nature, your intuition sends a warning signal, a feeling of unease or heaviness. When you act in harmony with them, you feel a sense of peace and lightness. The eclipse of the spirit. Modern man has allowed the noise of the intellect, logic, calculation, and social expectation to scream so loudly that the quiet voice of the intuition can no longer be heard. You have buried your compass under a mountain of useless information. The enlightenment. To sense the movement of the laws, you do not need more study, you need more stillness. You must learn to distinguish between the wishful thinking of the brain and the quiet conviction of the spirit. The intuition is your direct link to the laws of nature. If you follow it strictly, it will lead you through the most complex web of fate, with the same unerring accuracy that leads a migratory bird across an ocean. It is the eye of the spirit that sees the law while the intellect is still fumbling with the symptoms. Part 5. Corrections and Revelations. The miracle defined. Why nothing ever happens supernaturally. For millennia, the word miracle has been used by religions to describe events that seem to defy the known laws of nature. These events are often held up as proof of a God who can suspend his own rules to favor certain individuals or to display his power. The correction. To believe that the Creator would break his own laws is to suggest that his will is imperfect, or that he made a mistake that requires a later correction. This is a spiritual impossibility. God is the law, therefore, a miracle is not a suspension of the laws of nature, but their perfect fulfillment in a manner that the human intellect cannot yet grasp. The hidden mechanics. When a miraculous healing occurs or an impossible event takes place, it is simply because a higher, more powerful law has been brought into play, or because the spiritual conditions were so perfectly aligned that the law of reciprocal action could manifest with lightning speed. The limit of human vision. Just as a man from 500 years ago would view a modern smartphone as a miracle, because he is ignorant of the laws of electromagnetism, so does modern man view spiritual events as supernatural, because he is ignorant of the laws of the ethereal and spiritual realms. The enlightenment. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens outside the framework of the laws of nature. The miracles performed by the great messengers of God were manifestations of their perfect knowledge of these laws. They did not break gravity or biology, they utilized higher spiritual pressures to produce effects that seemed magic to those trapped in a lower vibration. A true seeker does not look for magic, he looks for the logic of the Creator, which is present in every event, no matter how extraordinary it may seem. Disease and healing. Restoring harmony between the body and the laws of nature. Man views disease as an external enemy, a thing that attacks him from the outside, or a biological glitch to be fought with chemicals and steel. This perspective ignores the root cause of all illness, a disturbance in the flow of radiation. The clarification. The physical body is merely the outermost vessel. It is sustained and formed by the spirit. When the human spirit remains in harmony with the laws of nature, the radiation it absorbs from the light flows through it purely and strengthens the physical house. However, when a man harbors dark thoughts, ignores his intuition, or lives in constant internal discord, he creates a blockage. The manifestation of disharmony. These spiritual blockages eventually densify and manifest in the physical body as disease. The body is simply the screen upon which the spirit's inner state is projected. The true path to healing. Real healing can never happen through the physical body alone. You may suppress the symptom with medicine, but if the spiritual disharmony remains, the law of reciprocal action will simply find another outlet for the unresolved debt. The eye-opener. To truly heal is to restore the rhythm. It requires a turning around of the spirit toward the light. When the spirit becomes pure and joyful, it allows the life force to flow once again without hindrance. This light radiation then acts as a cleansing fire that can, in many cases, dissolve the physical manifestations of the disease. Health is the natural state of a spirit that swings in the laws of nature. Disease is the friction caused by resisting them. The final reckoning. The acceleration of the laws in the current era, the Great Cleaning. Many people today feel an inexplicable sense of pressure. Time seems to be moving faster. Disasters, both personal and global, seem to strike with increasing frequency and intensity. This is not your imagination, it is a cosmic event. The correction. You are living in the era of the Great Cleaning, die gross Reinigung. The Creator has increased the power flowing into creation. Think of it as a surge of electricity through a circuit. This increased pressure does not change the laws, but it accelerates their effects. The speed of sowing and reaping. In previous ages, the law of reciprocal action might take lifetimes to return a deed to its sender. Today, because of the increased pressure, the harvest comes almost immediately. This is why the world seems to be in such chaos. The accumulated debts of thousands of years are now being called in for payment simultaneously. The sorting of the grain. This pressure acts like a centrifugal force. It pushes everything to its logical conclusion. The good becomes better, and the evil becomes more blatantly evil. There is no longer any middle ground where one can hide. The enlightenment. The judgment is not a courtroom scene in the clouds, it is a natural process of maturation. The increased light radiation makes it impossible for anything, heavy or dark, to remain in the presence of the pure light. Just as a dross is burned away in a furnace to reveal the gold, so is creation being heated to remove all that cannot harmonize with the divine will. For those who seek the truth, this acceleration is a blessing, it is the breaking of the chains. For those who cling to the old, heavy ways, it is a catastrophe. The laws of nature are now working at double speed to prepare the soil for a new era. Part 6. The Way Out. Awakening. How to begin swinging in the laws of nature today. Mankind has spent thousands of years in a spiritual sleep, wandering through the garden of creation like a somnambulist. To awaken is not to join a new organization or to adopt a new set of intellectual dogmas. It is a profound, internal change of direction. The correction. You cannot think your way into awakening. The intellect can only analyze the path, it cannot walk it. Awakening begins when the spirit, the real I, decides to take the lead. This happens the moment you realize that every circumstance of your life is the result of your own past swinging in the laws, and that you alone possess the power to change your future vibration. The first step. Absolute honesty. You must strip away the layers of self-justification. Stop blaming society, upbringing, or fate for your condition. Acknowledge that you are exactly where the laws of nature have placed you based on your previous volitions. The second step, the purity of thought. Since the law of attraction and reciprocal action respond to your inner radiation, you must become the gatekeeper of your mind. Do not allow dark, envious, or base thoughts to take root. Even if you do not act on a bad thought, the energy of that thought is a sowing that will bring a harvest of a similar nature. The enlightenment. To swing in the laws means to live with the same naturalness as a flower that turns toward the sun. It is a state of joyful activity. When you align your will with the will of the Creator, the laws of nature, you no longer feel burdened by life. Instead, you feel the lift of the cosmic current. You begin to move with the power of the light rather than against it. The transformation of life, living as a conscious part of the great whole. Once the awakening has occurred, the human being can no longer live for self alone. You begin to see that you are a small but vital link in a massive, living chain of being. The clarification. Living as a conscious part of the great whole does not mean abandoning your earthly duties or retreating to a mountaintop. On the contrary, it means fulfilling your earthly tasks with a new, higher quality. The law of movement. Nature is constant movement. Stagnation is decay. A transformed life is one of constant, productive labor, not just for material gain, but for the ennoblement of your surroundings. Whether you are a laborer, an artist, or a leader, the quality of your intent is what matters to the laws of nature. The harmony of giving and taking. You must recognize that in nature, everything is a cycle. You cannot only take from life. To remain healthy and light, you must give back through service, through beauty, and through pure radiations. If you only accumulate for yourself, you become a blockage in the flow of the light, and the law of gravitation will eventually pull you down under the weight of your own dead possessions. The eye-opener. A transformed human being is a light bearer. By living strictly according to the laws of nature, you become a focal point through which the divine power can flow into the material world without being distorted. You bring order where there is chaos, and peace where there is strife, simply by the power of your luminous presence. Conclusion. The law is the love and justice of the Creator. In the closing of this guide, we must correct the most persistent error of all, the belief that God's love and God's law or justice are two different things. The final correction. You have been taught that justice is a cold, stern punishment, and love is a soft, indulgent forgiveness that bypasses the law. This is a human misconception. In the Creator, love and justice are one. The laws of nature are the love of the Creator. Justice ensures that you receive exactly what you have earned, with no mistakes and no favoritism. This is the greatest security a spirit can have. Love is what created these laws in the first place, so that every spirit has a clear, reliable path back to its spiritual home. If the laws were not immutable, if they could be bent through special pleading, the universe would collapse into a nightmare of uncertainty. The fact that the fire burns the child who touches it is not an act of malice, but an act of love that teaches the child the nature of reality so that he may survive and grow. The enlightenment. The laws of nature are the great guide for mankind. They are the rungs of a ladder that leads from the darkness of the material world to the luminous heights of the spirit. To understand them is to lose all fear. To obey them is to find true freedom. To love them is to love the Creator Himself. Keep the hearth of your thoughts pure. By so doing, you will bring peace and be happy. How this book functions as a guide to the seeker. A logical, non-dogmatic explanation for why life happens the way it does. The seeker is often someone who has felt a void that neither modern materialism nor traditional dogma could fill. You have asked, why? 1,000 times. Why suffering exists, why some are born into wealth and others into misery, and why there seems to be no visible justice in the world. The correction. Most explanations offered to the seeker involve mystery, or God's inscrutable will. This guide rejects such vagueness. Life does not happen to you, it happens through the laws of nature. The seeker is shown that the universe is not a chaotic playground of chance, but a strictly ordered school of experience. The logic of existence. This book clarifies that every event in your life is a link in a chain of cause and effect. It removes the need for blind belief by replacing it with conviction through understanding. The map of reality. By explaining the various planes of matter and the laws that govern them, the seeker is given a map. You no longer wander. You recognize that you are a traveler who has simply forgotten the rules of the road. The enlightenment. To the seeker, this book is a lighthouse. It does not demand that you believe its words, but invites you to test them against your own experiences and your intuition. When you see that the law of reciprocal action explains your past and the law of attraction explains your current surroundings, the why of life becomes as clear as a mathematical equation. Understanding brings peace, and peace brings the strength to begin the ascent. To the trapped, breaking the chains of blind faith and rigid atheism. There are two great prisons in which the human spirit is currently held: the prison of blind faith, which forbids questioning, and the prison of rigid atheism, which denies anything the physical eye cannot see. Both are traps, because they freeze the spirit in a state of one-sidedness. The clarification. The prison of faith. Many are trapped in dogmas that paint the Creator as a human-like figure who can be bribed with prayers or who forgives sins without the sinner having to balance the debt through the law. This guide breaks these chains by showing that justice is inescapable, but that this very inescapability is the highest form of love, as it ensures the spirit's eventual perfection. The prison of atheism. Others are trapped in a cold, mechanical view of the world, believing that death is the end and that morality is a mere social construct. This guide corrects this by showing the mathematical perfection of the universe. It demonstrates that the unseen is not unscientific, but simply a finer grade of matter governed by laws that are more consistent than any human-made laboratory. The eye-opener. For the trapped, this book is a key. It shows that God and nature are not opposites. The atheist finds the logic he craves, and the believer finds the living truth he sensed but could not explain. By reconciling these two extremes, the spirit is set free from the narrowness of human opinions and is allowed to breathe the fresh air of universal reality. To mankind today, a warning that we cannot master nature until we learn to obey her. Modern mankind is like a child who has found a loaded weapon and believes himself a soldier. You have learned to manipulate some of the outer effects of the laws of nature, electricity, the atom, the gene, and in your vanity, you believe you have conquered nature. The correction. You have not conquered nature, you have only exploited her for a brief moment. Because you do not understand the spiritual core of these laws, your mastery has led to a world on the brink of collapse. You have built a civilization that stands against the pressure of the light. The illusion of control. Man believes he can pollute the earth, harbor hatred in his heart, and ignore the spiritual rhythms of life without consequence. But the laws of nature are now beginning to rebound. The environmental, social, and mental crises of today are the law of reciprocal action returning the master's errors back upon his own head. The necessity of obedience. In the spiritual sense, obedience is not a groveling submission. It is the wise alignment of a craftsman with his tools. A sailor does not conquer the wind, he obeys its direction by setting his sails correctly. Only then does the wind carry him to his goal. The final revelation. This guide serves as a final warning. The time for human arrogance is over. The great cleaning is accelerating the laws, and anything that does not swing in harmony with the divine will be crushed by the very laws it tried to defy. Mankind's only way out is to stop trying to be the master, and start being a conscious servant of the great whole. To obey the laws of nature is to live, to defy them is to perish. Epilogue. The gateway to the luminous heights. The journey through these pages has not been an exercise in intellectual curiosity, but a summons to the spirit. We have traced the threads of the laws of nature from their origin in the radiant will of the Creator down to the very soil upon which you stand. The final clarification. You must now realize that the laws of nature are not a distant subject for study, but the very air your spirit breathes. They are the silent, relentless, and perfect language of God. To have read these words is to have received a gift of immense responsibility. Ignorance can no longer be your shield. From this moment forward, every thought you harbor and every deed you perform is done with the conscious knowledge that the loom of creation is instantly weaving it into your destiny. The correction of the path. Mankind has wandered far into the thickets of its own vanity. You have built a world of shadows, believing it to be the only reality. But the shadows are now lengthening. The great cleaning, mentioned in these chapters, is not a threat of destruction, but a promise of liberation. The laws of nature are simply shaking out the dust of human error to reveal the pristine beauty of the work of God. The enlightenment of the future. The way out of the current chaos is surprisingly simple, yet it demands the utmost from you: inner purity. If you keep the hearth of your thoughts pure, you align yourself with the law of attraction of homogeneous species, drawing only light toward you. If you act with noble intent, the law of reciprocal action will build a bridge of peace for your future. If you shed the heaviness of earthly greed and intellectual pride, the law of gravitation will effortlessly lift your spirit toward the luminous heights. The closing call. This book is a guide, but a guide cannot walk for you. The gate to the kingdom of the Spirit stands open, governed by the same laws that cause the seasons to change and the stars to glow. Whether you enter that gate or remain trapped in the dissolving density of your own errors is a decision only you can make through the exercise of your free will. Live in such a way that you become a living prayer, not through words, but through a life that swings in joyful harmony with the great laws of the universe. In this harmony alone lies your peace, your protection, and your eternal homecoming. To help you anchor the vast knowledge of the laws of nature into your daily life, here is a set of practical exercises. These are designed to bridge the gap between intellectual understanding and the living, swinging, of the spirit. Daily exercises for the spirit. Living in harmony with the laws. 1. The morning vibration, law of attraction. Before you interact with the world or consume any media, spend 5 minutes in absolute silence. The goal: to set a homogeneous tone for your day. The action: deliberately anchor your thoughts on a noble concept, purity, gratitude, or the beauty of the Creator's work. This creates a spiritual magnetism that will attract similar vibrations throughout your day, protecting you from the chaotic influences of others. 2. The gatekeeper of thoughts, law of reciprocal action. Throughout the day, treat your thoughts as physical seeds you are dropping into a field. The goal: to become conscious of your invisible sowing. The action: when an envious, judgmental, or dark thought arises, do not fight it with anger, which only feeds it. Instead, look at it and let it go, replacing it with a constructive volition. Remind yourself: I do not wish to harvest the fruit of this seed. 3. The check of the inner weight, law of gravitation. Whenever you feel stressed, anxious, or heavy, stop and assess your spiritual weight. The goal: to maintain spiritual buoyancy. The action: ask yourself, am I clinging to a material desire, a grudge, or an intellectual worry? These are the lead weights that pull the soul down. Consciously decide to hand over the result of your worries to the laws of God. As you release the attachment to the outcome, you will feel a literal lightness in your chest. This is the law of gravitation in action. 4. Sensing the small workers, animism, elemental forces. Once a day, look at a part of nature, a plant, a cloud, or even the water you drink, and acknowledge the invisible servants, the elementals that maintain it. The goal: to break the rigidity of the intellect and reawaken intuition. The action: instead of seeing resources or weather, try to sense the life behind the form. This simple act of recognition builds a bridge between you and the elemental world, making your environment more friendly to your spirit. 5. The evening harvest, review of responsibility. Before sleep, review the events of the day not as a judge, but as a gardener. The goal: to take responsibility for your weaving. The action: identify one moment where you acted against your intuition. Acknowledge it without self-pity, and resolve to adjust the shuttle tomorrow. This prevents the threads of error from becoming too entangled, making them easier to resolve through the law of reciprocal action. Keep the hearth of your thoughts pure. By so doing you will bring peace and be happy.